Throughout the annals of history, we remember the heroes, the martyrs, and the saints. We celebrate the mothers of the believers and the champions of faith. But what of the villains? Those whose names are etched in history not for their piety, but for their relentless enmity towards the truth. They serve as a timeless warning, a lesson for all of humanity. Today on Justice Quran, we delve into the life of one of the most formidable and feared figures from the early days of Islam. A woman so consumed by hatred, her name and her fate were immortalized not just in the history books, but by Allah Himself in the eternal Quran. She was a queen of her society, a woman of power and prestige, yet she is remembered as a carrier of firewood, destined for the blazing fire. This is the story of Jamil, the story of Arwa bint Harb, the story of the woman who earned a divine curse. To understand Jamil, we must first understand the world she fought so fiercely to protect. It was 7th century Mecca, a bustling hub of trade and pilgrimage. But the pilgrimage was not to the one God, it was to the house of Allah, the Kaaba, which had been filled with 360 idols. Mecca was a tribal society, where lineage and wealth were the ultimate measures of a person's worth. At the very pinnacle of this power structure were the Quraysh, the custodians of the Kaaba, and within the Quraysh, one family stood supreme, the Banu Umayyah. Jamil was born into this elite class. Her name was Arwa bint Harb, which means Arwa, daughter of Harb. Her father was Harb ibn Umayyah, a chief of the Quraysh. Her brother was Abu Sufyan ibn Harb, a man who would become the arch-nemesis of the Prophet Muhammad before his eventual and glorious acceptance of Islam. She did not marry beneath her station. She was wed to one of the most powerful and influential men in Mecca, Abu Lahab ibn Abdul Muttalib. Think about that name. Abdul Muttalib was the grandfather of the Prophet Muhammad. This means Abu Lahab was the Prophet's own uncle. The house of Abdul Muttalib was divided. From it would come both the greatest support for the message of Islam, like Hamza and Ali, and its most bitter, intimate enemies. Abu Lahab and Jamil were the ultimate power couple, wealthy, well-connected, and fiercely proud of their pagan heritage. Their world was one of privilege, power, and polytheism. And for years, it was stable, until the day the mountain of light, Jabal an-Nur, began to glow with a revelation that would shatter their world forever. When Muhammad first began to preach the message of La ilaha illallah, there is no God but Allah, the Meccan elite did not take him seriously at first. They called him a poet, a sorcerer, a madman. But as the message began to resonate with the slaves, the poor, and the youth, threatening the very social and economic fabric of Mecca, their ridicule turned to rage. The initial soft opposition hardened into a systematic persecution, and at the forefront of this persecution were Abu Lahab and his fiery wife, Jamil. The Quran describes their role with piercing clarity. Let us reflect upon Surah Al-Masad, also known as Surah Al-Lahab. تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب سيصلى نارا ذات لهب وامرأته حمالة الحطب في جيدها حبل من مسد. Perish the hands of Abu Lahab, and perish he. His wealth will not avail him or that which he gained. He will enter to burn in a fire of blazing flame, and his wife as well, the carrier of firewood. Around her neck is a rope of twisted fiber. This entire chapter, revealed early in Mecca, was a divine condemnation of this couple. It wasn't just a prediction of their fate in the hereafter. It was a public and humiliating rebuttal in the here and now. Imagine the scene. The Prophet would stand in the valley, calling people to Islam, and Abu Lahab would follow him, shouting, "Don't listen to him. He is a liar. He has abandoned the religion of his forefathers." And Jamil, she was not a passive observer. She was a general in this war against Islam. The Quran gives her a title, Hamalat al-Hatab, the carrier of firewood. What does this mean? The classical scholars, including Ibn Abbas and Qatada, explain it in two profound ways. Literally, she would gather thorns and sharp branches and scatter them in the path of the Prophet, hoping he would step on them and injure himself. Think of the pettiness, the sheer hatred to personally engage in such a vile act. Metaphorically, she was a carrier of firewood, in the sense that she was a slanderer, a talebearer. She would go from one person to another, fanning the flames of discord and hatred against the Muslims, adding fuel to the fire of persecution. She was the epitome of a malicious instigator. The historical accounts paint a vivid picture of Jamil's character. She was not just an opponent, she was vicious, eloquent in her insults, and fearless in her hostility. One of the most famous incidents involved the revelation of Surah Al-Masad itself. Furious that Muhammad had publicly disgraced her and her husband, she went to confront him. The Prophet was sitting with his close companion Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, may Allah be pleased with him, near the Kaaba. Jamil, in a blind rage, stormed towards them. She was carrying a heavy stone. Unable to see the Prophet clearly, perhaps because Abu Bakr shielded him or because her anger blinded her, she demanded, "O Abu Bakr, where is your companion? I have heard that he has slandered me. By Allah, if I had found him, I would have struck this stone on his mouth." She then launched into a poetic tirade, a common way of expressing contempt in Arab culture. "We reject the reprobate, his words we repudiate, and his religion we loathe and hate," she ranted and raved, not realizing that the man she was threatening was right in front of her. After she left, Abu Bakr, R.A., turned to the Prophet and said, "O Messenger of Allah, did she not see you?" The Prophet replied calmly, "An angel was concealing me from her." This story is a powerful testament to two things: the divine protection of the Prophet and the spiritual blindness that envelops those who are consumed by hatred. She was so lost in her rage that she could not even see the object of her hatred, shielded by the unseen. Her hatred extended beyond the Prophet. When the Muslims were boycotted in the valley of Abu Talib for 3 agonizing years, it was leaders like Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl who enforced the brutal terms. Jamil would have been a staunch supporter of this economic and social siege that brought immense suffering to the Muslim community, including her own relatives from the Banu Hashim. She represented the old guard, the pride of lineage, the worship of status, the fear of change. To her, Islam was not a spiritual truth. It was a social revolution that threatened to topple her from her privileged position. The curse of Surah Al-Masad was not an empty threat. It began to manifest in their worldly lives long before their entry into the hereafter. The verse says, "His wealth will not avail him, or that which he gained." Abu Lahab was one of the richest men in Mecca, yet his wealth became a source of his misery. He boasted that he would buy his way out of any punishment, but Allah declared it worthless. Their social status crumbled. They were the subject of a Quranic chapter that would be recited by Muslims for all time, forever branding them as enemies of God. But the most significant manifestation of their divine rejection came during the Battle of Badr. The Quraysh army, led by Jamil's brother Abu Sufyan, marched to war against the Muslims. Abu Lahab, too arrogant to go himself, sent a mercenary named Al-As ibn Hisham in his place, paying his expenses. When the news of the Quraysh's devastating defeat at Badr reached Mecca, it was a shockwave. The mighty Quraysh had been humbled by a small, ill-equipped army of believers. Abu Lahab was filled with grief and rage, but a few days later he developed a severe, virulent disease, likely a form of plague or a deadly infection. The people of Mecca, fearing contagion, isolated him. His own family was afraid to approach him. He died a miserable death, alone and despised. His body was left to rot for days before his sons, in shame, finally pushed his decaying corpse into a grave from a distance with sticks, unable to touch him. This was the man who once walked the streets of Mecca as a prince. And what of Jamil, the carrier of firewood? The historical accounts are less specific about her death, but they are consistent in one thing. She died upon disbelief, stubborn and hateful to the end. She never accepted Islam. She never softened her heart. The firewood she carried in life, the thorns of her persecution, and the fuel of her slander became the very reality of her eternal abode. The rope of fiber around her neck in the Quranic description is interpreted by scholars as a necklace of fire she will wear in hell, or a symbol of the burdens of her sins that she carried in this world. So, why does the story of Jamil, a woman who died over 1400 years ago, matter to us today on Justice Quran? Her story is not just a historical anecdote, it is a living lesson from the Quran, the futility of worldly power against divine will. Jamil had everything the world could offer: wealth, status, family, power. Yet it all counted for nothing against the truth of Islam. This is a reminder that true success lies not in worldly standing, but in submission to Allah. The danger of blind hatred. Her hatred for the Prophet was so consuming that it blinded her spiritually. She could not see the truth, even when it was in front of her. Hatred is a poison that destroys the heart first. The power of the tongue and actions. She was condemned for her actions, carrying thorns, and for her speech, slandering and instigating. This teaches us the immense weight of our own actions and words. Are we using them to build or to destroy? To spread peace or to carry firewood? Divine justice is certain. The story of Jamil and Abu Lahab is one of the clearest examples of divine justice in the Quran. It assures the believers that no oppressor, no matter how powerful, will escape the judgment of Allah. And it consoles the oppressed that their patience will be rewarded. Jamil is a stark reminder, a signpost on the path of humanity that reads, "Danger, this path leads to ruin." Her story pushes us to look inward and ask ourselves, what are we carrying? Are we carrying the thorns of hatred, arrogance, and slander? Or are we carrying the light of faith, compassion, and truth? The choice, as always, is ours. Thank you for joining us on this profound journey into the pages of the Quran and history. This was Jamil, the most feared woman in Islamic history, revealed. If this story has impacted you, please share your thoughts in the comments below, like this video, and subscribe to Quran Stories TV for more deep dives into the timeless lessons of the Quran. Until next time, may Allah protect us from the traits of the condemned and guide us to the path of the beloved. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.